Week 6 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I would start this week. The first one, the New England Patriots. So the Week 5 victory was at the Buffalo Bills division rival. And this New England Patriot team obviously trying to take the next step, and that was a big victory. And their defense, they made Josh Allen earn every point in that game, including creating 3 turnovers in that game. So the last few games for New England, Week 3 versus the Steelers, 21 points allowed, interception. Week 4 versus Carolina, 13 points allowed, a sack, a kick return touchdown. And Week 5 at Buffalo, like I said, they played great football and came up with the upset victory. 20 points allowed, a sack, interception, 2 fumble recoveries. So this week, a great matchup at the New Orleans Saints. One of the worst offenses, obviously, in all pro football was in this New Orleans Saints offense. They're 1-4 in the season. They got some decent guys, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson. But after the performance we saw New England put on in Week 5's game at the Buffalo Bills, I think they go out there and they're going to make it a long day for Spencer Rattler. Get a few sacks, get a few turnovers, and hold them in the mid-teens to low 20s. The next DST is the Green Bay Packers. Packers were on a bye week. And the first 3 weeks of the season, they came out like gangbusters, looking like the best defense in all pro football. And then the Dallas Cowboys humbled them with a big ball game in Week 4 that ended in a 40-40 tie. There's a few games for Green Bay before the bye. Week 2 versus Washington, 18 points allowed, 4 sacks in that one. Week 3, Cleveland, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks and interception. And then, like I said, Week 4 at Dallas, 38 points allowed and a sack. So now coming off the bye week, they're versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And we know it's been tough sledding for Cincinnati ever since Joe Burrow's been out to begin the season for the Cincinnati Bengal team, where they're turning the football over a lot at an alarming rate. The offensive line isn't any good. Jake Browning's taking a lot of sacks. And Jamar Chase, besides the one big game last week where he went off for a big fantasy day, even though it was a losing effort versus the Detroit Lions, they really haven't done much. So Green Bay, after giving up 38 points to Dallas's offense, coming off a bye week, they're going to want to redeem themselves. And they're back home as well in Lambeau Field, which is always a plus for this Packer team. So this week, definitely a defense I would start. The next defense, Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts defense has been a better unit at home than it's been on the road over the last few seasons. And they proved it once again in Week 5 with a big ball game this defense played. So the last few weeks, they're playing good defense. Week 3 at Tennessee, 20 points allowed, 4 sacks, a pick 6, a block kick. Week 4, the Rams in a high-scoring loss, 27 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. And then Week 5 versus the Raiders, they shut that offense down, even though I know they were out Brock Bowers in that game, and Geno Smith's been a turnover machine. 6 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a block kick. So this week, another good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals. They give up the 15th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. In Indianapolis, they're getting pressure, they're creating turnovers, and their offense is way improved this season with Daniel Jones in their quarterback. And anytime, obviously, an offense could put up points on the board, it makes it more comfortable, and the defense plays with less pressure where they don't have to think they got to make a stop every drive. So with all those factors in the middle of the pack Arizona team coming in to Indianapolis after they blew that game and lost to Tennessee in Week 5, I think this Colt defense once again goes out there and is a solid start for fantasy owners. Next DST, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're coming off a bye week as well, just like the Green Bay Packers. And we know defensively they're loaded. TJ Watt, Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay in the secondary. So this team has a lot of big-time players on the defense. They're coming off a bye, and they got a great matchup versus division rival, the Cleveland Browns. They give up the 5th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the Browns, we know they got the young nucleus going. Dylan Gabriel in there, quarterback. I thought he looked decent last week. Juckins, he's been impressive in the backfield so far, the rookie. Harold Fannin, Isaiah Bond. So a lot of first and second year players in this lineup for this Cleveland Brown team, and I just think Pittsburgh's going to tee off back home off the bye week. It's just a great matchup for them. And the last few weeks for their DST, Week 2 versus Seattle, gave up tons of points, no doubt, 31 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 INTs. Week 3 and New England played great defense, 14 points allowed, 5 sacks, an interception, and a whopping 4 fumble recoveries. And then Week 4 versus Minnesota overseas, 21 points allowed, 6 sacks, 2 interceptions. So like I said, when you got one of the best pass rushers in the league like TJ Watt and one of the better secondaries, obviously, with Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay, it's going to make everything easier. And this week versus a very young Cleveland Brown team, I think Pittsburgh goes out there and tees off in the 5th and final defense DST. That is a start, is the Denver Broncos. So coming into the year, they were the number 1 ranked DST on most fantasy channels and obviously websites was this DST. But this season, The first 3 weeks of the year, the defense didn't play great, but the last 2 weeks, they've turned it around and obviously made a statement, defeating the undefeated defending champs of the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia in Week 5. So the last few weeks, Week 3 at the Chargers, 23 points allowed, 5 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. Week 4 versus Cincinnati, 3 points allowed, 3 sacks. And then, like I said, Week 5 at Philadelphia, that high-powered offense and defending champs, 17 points allowed. And to get 6 sacks on that offensive line is some feat. And this week, an amazing matchup versus the New York Jets in London overseas. This Jet team gives up the 7th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. Fields was taking a beating by one of the worst defenses in the league in last week's ball game versus the Dallas Cowboys. And I think this week, this Denver Bronco team, they go out there, they play loose once again, even though they could be coming off, obviously, a big victory, and they're going to take the Jets easy, but I just don't see that with a Sean Payton coach team. So I think Denver goes out there once again. And let's be honest, besides Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall in this offense, there's not many threats. And I think the Broncos have a good game. So that's a few defense DST units I would start for Week 6 of the fantasy football season.